the module really, I started thinking about it when it dawned on me that whether we're thinking about the kind of onslaught of summer blockbusters you saw in the cinema, or whether we're thinking about spectacles on a cultural level like the V for Vendetta mask at Occupy protests, or any other kind of protest event since 2008, it seemed to me like graphic novels or comics were very much present in the kind of contemporary cultural moment. And as such, it seemed like now, perhaps more than at any other time, it would be worthwhile to try and do away with the slightly dismissive description of the genre as kind of being paraliterary, not quite kind of literary enough, and actually read them as literature, both on a kind of a visual and in terms of a textual level. And that really became the kind of core founding idea of the module as a whole. So that the intention of the module is to look at a range of different types of graphic novels, and indeed to look at both comic strips and larger novel length pieces, but then to read them not just as kind of literary things, but as literary works that have a strong dialogue with what is happening in our world today on a cultural and political level. So we're constantly thinking about how reading these texts could inform the way in which we're thinking about the world today. The comics scholar Douglas Volk has this really wonderful quote where he says, the basic philosophical principle of all comics is there is another world, which is this world. And that's really what the kind of module plays around with and thinks about. So whether we're reading something that is quite kind of fantastical, superhero comics like the X-Men or Batman or anything like that, or whether we're looking at something autobiographical like Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi or Alison Bechdel's Fun Home, or any of these kinds of texts, what we're kind of always thinking about is going, well, clearly these texts are a separate world in their own because they're all created by the writing and illustration of each artist slash writer, or artist and writer if it's a collaborative piece. But nevertheless, that world that we find in the book of the comic or the graphic novel can be equally mapped onto our own world. And those are the kind of questions we play around with, and we cover a range of different styles. We look at superhero comics, we look at political satires, we look at autobiographies and so on. And throughout, we always kind of return to thinking about how they enter into a dialogue with broader ideas of culture, and we cover questions like, or issues like, identity and gender and sexuality. We think about questions like the end of the world. We think about questions like whether comics can kind of enact articulations of protest, or whether they are part of a kind of a broader cultural implication. So throughout the module, we kind of engage with them on an in-depth level, and overall kind of hopefully by the end of it come to realize that the study of this genre or this medium more broadly speaks to the very heart of a lot of the things that kind of make up the intellectual rigor and center of an English degree overall.